the Hub CP podcast.
It's dead simple.
We're here to inspire entrepreneurs
and celebrate rebels.
We want to provoke reaction, share ideas,
colour your grey cells and entertain.
Nothing's off limits. Nothing.
From Cooper Parry,
the rebels of accountancy,
this is the Hub CP podcast.
Let's do it.
Why don't we start by telling us a bit about your story of when you left uni, all the way through to us sitting in this room today, in terms of a snapshot.
Yeah, so it's quite some story. A lot of zigging and zagging. Obviously, you and I met back at university, and I turned up at university having dreams of becoming a professional rugby player. I was studying sports science. If I'm honest, largely because it had the word sport in it. I wasn't really that interested in the degree, and it was just a bit of a rude awakening, I think, for myself. Obviously at Brunel University, which arguably is the second best sports university in the country, and I just realised very quickly the levels to make it to the top, and I was obviously surrounded by people that are much, much better than me. So at the age of 20 at university, not really that engaged with the degree and having the time of my life, but a few things had happened to me earlier on in my life that I kind of had quite perspective on not wasting time, and so I just kind of, that summer at the end of that first year, I thought, I'm wasting my time here. I was there to achieve something that I knew I wasn't going to achieve, and I'd read about this course that you could do in California to become a professional snowboarder. So I went out to America, to California, Mammoth Mountain, got on this training course, qualified as a pro snowboarder, and 21 years old just as I qualified, and my plan was to teach snowboarding and just be a bit of a vagabond, to be honest with you. Go down the coast surfing, work in a bar, just see where life was going to take me, and obviously do lots of snowboard instructing along the way. And I was racing border cross and had a pretty bad accident, broke every bone in my wrist, shattered my wrist, dislocated my elbow, hit my head, and had a cast on up to my shoulder for the best part of a year, and called home and said to my mum that things hadn't quite gone according to plan again, and I had a choice. So it was travel insurance were paying for all of the operations I was having and the treatment, the post-recovery treatment, and managed to convince my mum it was a much better idea for me as a 21-year-old to stay in Los Angeles, and thankfully I had a friend who could put me up, and just had a year of reflection really. And it was during that time I realised I was super passionate about food and drink. My father started the first ever wine bar in Manchester, mum worked in catering. I thought, you know what, I think next to sport, my next biggest passion is in this food and drink world. And I wrote my first business plan. It was to start a healthy Californian Mexican style food business. This is 22 years ago. There was no Leon's on the high street, Pod, Itsu. Yes, there was Pret had actually was still around then, and obviously McDonald's and everything, but I kind of wanted to do a Californian version of Leon with a Mexican slant, and came back to Manchester, raised half the funding, was working as a grill chef in some deadbeat cafe in Manchester, trying to work out how to run this new business. Tried to get a job at Pret, they wouldn't give me a job. Which was, never quite worked out why they wouldn't give me a job, but I did. The manager obviously didn't like me, and couldn't raise all the funds, and it's just one of those things. At the time I was absolutely devastated because I was convinced this restaurant concept would be great, but I was running out of money. Well, I had no money other than what I was getting as a grill chef, and came down to London. Innocent Drinks had just launched, and I presume most of your listeners know Innocent Drinks. It started by three guys, and one of the things they're famous for is telling stories on the packaging. So they said, if you're interested in a job, come and visit us at Fruit Towers. It was on Goldhawk Road, Shepherd's Bush, and I literally got on the tube, headed down there, knocked on the door, and met the guys and told them about my story in California and how I'd seen smoothies and what a great product they thought they had. And I guess my job interview was they filled up a van full of smoothies and said, off you trot up to Manchester then and see if you can sell them out the back of your van. And I started doing that in 2001. Stayed for 14 years. Saw the business go from tiny little business selling smoothies in London to a global brand, valued at over $500 million when it was sold to Coca-Cola. And I was looking after the food division for Innocent between 2008 and 2015, and when Coke did the deal to buy Innocent, I brokered a deal with James Quincy, the current CEO of Coca-Cola, and Douglas Lamont, who's actually just left Innocent as CEO. He's now CEO of Tony's Chocolonely, for me to gracefully and elegantly shut down that food division over that couple of year period between 2012, 13 and 15. And then they gave me their blessing to go up and start up on my own. So now I don't think any deal has ever been done like this in FMCG, where essentially I'm working for arguably the biggest brand in the world. Certainly back then, Coca-Cola. It's probably a tech business now, but and I was shotting with their blessing a part of that, and at the same time writing up a business plan to do my own thing. So 26th of April 2015 we sold our very first BOL Veg Pot, and now we're 8 years later. So that's the plotted history to how you and I went from hanging out in halls of residence together at university 20 odd years ago to sitting in front of you now.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
Celebrating rebels.
This is the Hub CP podcast.
And tell us about BOL. Tell us about what's the vision for the business? What is it that you essentially? What is that market that you're looking at, and where would the listener find a BOL?
Yeah. So I think the first thing to say is that over the last eight years have really evolved the vision and the purpose. I came from a business that was big on deep-rooted purpose, big vision, values, underpinned everything we did, all of the big decisions we made, and definitely helped attract and retain some of the best talent around. So starting BOL, I was all about trying to make it easy for busy people to eat well. I was the person that was living most of my career up in Manchester, constantly on Virgin trains. Nothing against Pret, even though they didn't give me a job. I spent far too much money in Pret, and I was like, there just wasn't that many healthy, great tasting, natural products you could grab and eat on the move through the supermarket. So it was about making it easy for busy people to eat well. The first couple of years were big success for us. We beat all our targets. We were profitable. In 2016 we won New Business of the Year at the National Business Awards, and at that time half of our business had recipes with meat, fish and dairy in, and the rest of the business was vegetarian and vegan. And I watched Cowspiracy, I read incredible books like How Not to Die, The Food Revolution, and I knew that there was a better way, and was slightly embarrassed that I didn't understand what impact our food choices have on the environment, and so decided we'd take the business 100% plant-based. So now we're all about trying to become a global brand, 100% naturally plant-powered. Everything we do is about inspiring the world to eat more plants. We're readily available on this little island in fridges all around the country, from Tesco, Sainsbury's, Waitrose, Morrison's, Asda, all the big supermarkets, lots of smaller brilliant shops like Planet Organic and Selfridges, places like that, and obviously an online presence in the likes of Ocado and online. But I mean, we are still tiny in the world of food and drink. We'll do circa 25 million in retail sales this year, and I do feel like we're just getting started, because this plant-based movement is largely being driven by flexitarians and people that are just trying to reduce down their meat, fish and dairy, and there's not that many 100% natural, great tasting alternatives out there if you've not got time to cook from scratch. I think that's the key point, really. I never ever buy or eat a BOL if you've got time on your hands to cook from scratch and meal prep for the week. There's nothing better. I love cooking from scratch, but if you are short on time and you don't want to compromise, then that's what that BOL is there to, I guess, deliver.
Nothing's off limits.
This is the Hub CP podcast.
You made that decision to go fully vegan almost like before the curve, before everyone has obviously followed it. You know, from that point of view. Yeah. One of the things we talk a lot about, and what we were talking about earlier, is about risk and about a kind of an entrepreneur are they just natural risk takers? At that point in your kind of thought process, where was it something that just felt natural? Was it a no-brainer? Did it feel like a risk, or were people saying, "Yeah, great idea, Paul, we're right behind you"? Or where was there any danger in that decision-making process?
Yes, in the sense of it was pretty binary, dropping meat, fish and dairy half the size of the business. So off the back of winning one of the biggest awards you can win in our industry, next board meeting I was telling the investors that I was going to make, or I was recommending, fundamentally it was on my shoulders to make the decision, that was going to quite literally wipe millions off the run rates of the business. And for those people that know the world of fast-moving consumer goods, it's not like running a restaurant. If we run a restaurant and decide we're going to take it vegan, then you're only wasting the stock that you've got if you're not going to sell it through. In our world, it takes 12 to 24 months to develop new products. So I made that decision without having an innovation pipe of products to replace. And I went to the big retailers like Tesco and told them that we were going to pull the Carolyn coconut chicken, the Caribbean jerk chicken, these recipes from market, and they were actually our best sellers. And I didn't have any MPD to replace them. So it's easy to look back now with rose-tinted glasses, but I don't think the word pivot is overused nowadays. Everyone's saying they're pivoting. I'm like, really? That's not a pivot. That's a bit of a slight change of direction. I was pivoting the business quite literally from a range and a brand that had animal products in to not, and that did wipe a lot of money, millions of pounds of revenue. And I told the team, I didn't tell the team, I told the team about what we were going to do and got them engaged with it, but I did also tell them this is a huge risk and brush up your CVs. We not in a maverick type way, but we are going to sail pretty close to the sun here. Yeah. But I just felt so passionate when I saw how inefficient the current food system is, and I thought, you know what, we can do it a better way, and we are definitely about trying to inspire the world to eat more plants, and we're trying to be a brand that's a plant-based brand that's loved by meat eaters. I'm not about trying to make it easier for more vegans to eat more vegan food. Of course we get a disproportionate amount of vegans that love what we do, but most of the people that will buy an eat BOL today will still eat meat, fish and dairy, and I just wanted to create a brand that was a bit more inclusive and wasn't about trying to make anybody feel guilty for what their food choices are. Yeah. The data's unequivocal. What we eat is the single biggest environmental decision we face every single day, and I wanted us to kind of sex up veg and it be a positive choice that you can have a delicious curry like lots of the curries that we make, and it doesn't have to contain chicken or whatever.
Inspiring entrepreneurs.
This is the Hub CP podcast.
I can see when you describe that how kind of inspiring or motivating that would be for your team and also for the consumer as well. How difficult was that to speak to your investors about it, bearing in mind they're keen on EBITDA growth, continual top line growth, and what you're saying is that essentially we're pivoting the business, we're going to revenue's going to go by 50%, but we're going to rebuild and go in this direction.
Yeah.
What was there? How was that met? Because that's normally the one thing that may scupper a plan in some way, shape, or form, because they may not feel in the same way as emotionally engaged with the brand as perhaps you might.
Yeah, and that's a great question, and something on the odd occasion a budding entrepreneur has wanted my perspective on stuff. I've said choosing your investors is one of the biggest and most important decisions you'll ever make, and thankfully I chose a group of investors who I already had an existing relationship with. So our angel investors were Jam Jar Investments in Rich, Adam and John, the Innocent founders, Liam Griffin, the CEO of Addison Lee, Simon Orange, Corpac and owner of Manchester Sale Sharks rugby team. So I, in that 14-15 year period of leaving university and working at Innocent, I'd built up a network of people who I had a huge amount of respect for, and I don't know, I definitely heard advice over the years about don't get your friends or family involved in your business, and I just think it's complete nonsense. I'm personally, I went to my friends and said, this is what I believe is a good business opportunity, and I can't guarantee you I'm going to make money, but I can guarantee you you'll never invest in someone that will work any harder than me, and I will throw everything at this, and actually it's really exciting, and that got the investment over the line. To then go to them a few years later and say I'm putting all that money essentially at risk wasn't easy at all, but I definitely laid the foundations from day one that I wanted their investment and I wanted their advice, but fundamentally the big decisions were going to sit on my shoulders, and they were backing me, and they definitely challenged it, because I definitely not pretending I was smart enough to predicted how big this part of food and drink would get over the last 5 or 6 years, but I definitely provided enough data and insight to demonstrate that we could do things better, we could be better as a brand, we could still achieve scale. I mean, Yvon Chouinard from Patagonia, what he's done this week, and
amazing.
I've read that book, Let My People Surf, so many times, and I mean, I believe in sustainable capitalism. I believe that business can be a force for good. I don't buy into this archaic way of doing things where it's all about feeding shareholder fat cats value and good riddance to anyone that gets in the way, or anything that gets in the way. It's just not the way business needs to be done.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about that, because obviously there's so much in the world right now of I think this B Corp movement, so much on ESG in terms of coming from so many different angles, and it really feels like certainly across the sort of the mid market we're still finding our way to a certain extent, and we see businesses, or I meet businesses, and you can see the greenwashers very quickly that are going in and talking about it. How do you make, because what you describe is genuinely authentic, how do you integrate that into a business that is looking to grow in a capitalist sort of environment, and also dealing with retailers who are always squeezing you on your margins?
It's difficult. It's difficult to have a triple bottom line, and I think your values and your purpose is only really truly tested when you have to put it above or sacrifice profit. It's great when we're making decisions that is good for top line, is good for the profit, and is also completely in line with our values of wanting to leave things a little bit better than we find them. A lot of the big decisions we've had to make is sacrificing a key financial metric, but we're doing it for the long term. It's not sustainable to constantly making decisions where you either can't grow top line or things are not profitable, but because we've got a good investor pool and they're in it for the long term, we're able to excite either talent. So we've just our values are very, very clear to everyone. It's all about family, it's all about ownership, it's all about growth, it's all about excellence, it's all about legacy. These are got a team of circa 30 people here in London, from people that were in the GB team competing in the sports world to people that were doing brilliantly well at massive businesses like Unilever to L'Oreal to superstars, early stage graduates or whatever. You got a lot of people that are high performing individuals. They can also see through the nonsense when they've got a plethora of different companies that they can choose from to go to. But coming to a business like BOL where they feel they can make a real difference that aligns with their own personal values, is what's key. And often people say to me in the interview process, they say, "Oh, by the way, I'm not vegan. Is that okay?" And that is totally okay, and that's part of what we're all about. Yes, there's obviously a disproportionate amount of vegetarians and vegans in the team, but at the same time, it's more about just having the respect put into the food system and for how we do things, and having a real passion for that. But it's back to your original question: how do you get that into the team? It's tough, and there is a lot of greenwashing going on out there at the moment, but I do think people can see through that.
Nothing's off limits.
This is the Hub CP podcast.
And what's the role of, when you talk about, because we're seeing it in our world a lot about culture, organisational performance being huge, people taking as much as they can from different industries. Sport is the classic one, but the one thing I'm always interested in is, what is the CEO's role in setting a company culture? Are they there? And I guess there's always two sides to it. Are they there to set that culture and to navigate the people around it, or are they there to understand what the culture is that they have in their business and kind of work around what's already there?
I'm 100% in the former camp. I passionately believe, especially in a small business like BOL, that one of my biggest responsibilities is to make sure that culture's at the heart of everything we're doing, and it's something that we've just mentioned to you off air. Every year I take the team away for a weekend, and we go on what we call a BOL day. We see what we've done there, and this year we went surfing to Lisbon, and I was debriefing on Friday at the end of play on Friday with a few people just sitting on the sofas downstairs. And it's typical. We just finish at 3:00 on a Friday at BOL, but still lots of people still in the office at 6:00, and I just asked them what their reflections were on the BOL day, and they said, to a person, it said when they were reflecting with their friends, they said it was like just going away with 30 mates. And to hear those words is just absolute music to my ears. This is a team of individuals who are particularly over the last few years have seriously felt the pressure. A big part of our business got an absolute kicking over COVID, over lockdown. We were in lots of outlets that shut. The behaviour, people buy BOL because they're busy, they're on the move, they're travelling around. Like, so much of the business, after coming off one of the best quarters, well, the best quarter we'd ever had in the January to March 2020, and then now dealing with the cost of living crisis, and it just on so many levels the last few years have really tough for so many people, and the team have worked ridiculously hard, but every single day the energy I see across the team, how much effort they're putting in, how much fun they're having whilst they're doing it, it's so special. I believe that happiness is largely driven by the fulfillment that you're feeling in the workplace and the relationships that you're building, given we spend so much time there, and you can't fake that. No amount of table tennis tables or pool tables or like all the funky Google stuff. Not saying Google don't have a great culture, but I think I obviously came from Innocent Drinks where it became quite famous, fruit towers, it was grass on the floor, and it was very kind of quirky. It feels like most offices are a bit like that now, certainly the ones I go to, but culture's about the people and the relationships, and there's no one that gets a job at BOL who I don't meet first. And my job is to keep understanding people every single day. I've got to, of course, set the tone of the culture, but I've then just got to keep listening to what people want, because each person's going to be different, and we've got to evolve in line with that.
Celebrating rebels.
This is the Hub CP podcast.
If we imagine, let's fast forward 3-5 years, BOL's continuing on its trajectory. How is that if you're going from 30 to maybe 100 people?
Yeah.
How does that change? How do you maintain that special sauce that BOL's got, where it's a group of mates?
Yeah.
Is that something you're going to have to sacrifice as you grow? Because this is a question we ask a lot. And we hear a lot saying the one thing that keeps me awake at night as a CEO is it's the culture that's got us to where we are today. As we go into that next phase of growth, it feels like culture is probably going to be the first thing that's going to be on the slab. So how do we retain that degree? And is that something you think about? Or
Yes, but it goes into that bucket of nice problems to have. It's something a lot more unpleasant to think about, but that's a nice one, because if we've got to consider that, then we're obviously delivering on what we want to achieve, which is scale on the inspiring the world to eat more plants. I don't believe it needs to be sacrificed, and when I joined Innocent there was less than 10 of us. When I left there was hundreds and hundreds of people, and our culture, even though it was slightly different when I left, was equally as special. So kind of go back to what I just said a minute ago. If we continue to recruit the quality of individual who has the right attitude and the right character, is bought into what we're trying to achieve as a business, then there's no reason going from 30 to 100 that the culture needs to change. I think it can get better. So I don't know what it's like when you go from 200-300 to 1,000 or 3,000. I've never been in a big business like that, but I have gone from 10 to 300, and we retained our special culture. And it is something that I think more and more is going to become important for CEOs to think about, because top talent want to work in an environment where the values are aligned with their own. Absolutely. So nowadays you can't hide from anything. You've got Glassdoor reviews or Google reviews. It's just the reality of what it is like behind closed doors is there for all to see and read. So if it isn't authentic, then you're going to get found out. It isn't just my job as a CEO. It's the lead team and everyone who's part of the team has, as I said, one of our values is about taking responsibility, owning it, having the right attitude. So it's about making sure that the people you continue to get through the door continue to represent that.
Nothing's off limits.
This is the Hub CP podcast.
One of the things we also talk about, and I'm interested in your views, is like intergenerational diversity. So Gen Z's coming, the millennials. I don't know. I keep forgetting what age group we fit into. I don't know. What
middle age.
I think it's receding and widening. I think will be the one. But having spoken to other CEOs in the space, there is with the younger generation coming through now. Are you finding that they're harder to recruit, harder to retain, and are they looking for something completely different to perhaps what you and I were looking for when we started our professional careers?
Yeah, 100%. I definitely. I don't think it. In the short time I was at university, I don't think we talked about saving the planet much. In fact, I don't even think it got spoken about once.
No.
I doubt there's many people at university now not talking about that and what role they may or may not want to pursue coming out of university that links up with responsibility. So I think there's been a seismic shift over the last few years, which I think is amazing. And in the early years, I think I struggled to get the balance right on recruitment and talent and pressure, because we were in such a those first 4 or 5 years, that startup like world of trying to stay alive is seriously high pressured, and we were really tight on finances. So I was probably recruiting people that really did believe, and great people, but they didn't really have the experience for the job I was trying to get them to do, and then actually you put people outside their comfort zone a little bit too much, and it's tough for people. So I definitely feel over the last few years I've learned that just going at a pace that works for people's own growth and development is something I think we're a lot more measured with. I definitely think the people coming out of university or school or looking for their first jobs are just as ambitious, if not more ambitious than we were. I just think success for them is very different. It isn't just about how much money they're getting in the bank at the end of each month. I know people, inquire about working at BOL because we are a B Corp, because they know that in many different ways we do put purpose over profit, that we are a business that does care about people and planet. There's all this stuff that does help us attract and retain talent. Now, of course, they want a decent wage as well, which we give, but it's not the be all and end all.
Yeah. And are you finding a turnover of staff? Are you seeing more sort of younger university leavers coming in and out of the business a lot quicker? And is that something that you're okay with? I mean, we were talking with the CEO of Dr. Wills that they're also B Corp ketchup business, and he's an ex-Goldman's banker, I think, and he was saying actually, we get people that come here for 2 years, and instead of trying to keep them forever, we just need to be okay with that. So is this something that you're seeing something similar in that space, or are they tending to stay a bit longer?
I think we're different to that, actually. I was looking at some numbers the other day. Our turnover rate now, our retention rate is as good as it's ever been. Even though the last couple of years have been tough, in percentage terms, it's low single digit of people that have moved on. Yep. So, and who knows what tomorrow will hold, but there's 30 people working here today, and I would be surprised if most of them are not still working here in a year's time. Yeah. I do think that there is so much more opportunity for them to learn and grow here, and they're just dialing down their passion for what we're doing. That I don't buy into the kind of come and go mentality. I definitely say to the team, I want them a bit like I did at Innocent. I want them to feel like this is the business school of all business schools, that they can be exposed to more stuff here than they would normally, than the bigger business would be able to offer them, and they're going to get out of their comfort zone more because of the responsibility that they'll get, and they'll learn. And I love the fact that they're all budding entrepreneurs and probably want to run their own business at some stage in the future. But I think I think there's so much that they can learn here that they can then go on and they can do great things elsewhere as well. But I'd be pretty gutted if we're talking in a year's time and there's a high percentage of people who've moved on. Yeah, I really want them to love being here as much as I love them here.
Inspiring entrepreneurs.
This is the Hub CP podcast.
Let's talk briefly about the future then, in terms of where what I mean. Obviously, you're orientated around a clear purpose. Again, if we look 5 years down the line, what would the major differences with BOL be? In 5 years compared to where we are today, do you think?
I think one of the biggest differences is that more people will have heard of us, and our arm's length distribution was a bit of a Coke term that wherever you are in the world you put your arm out and you can grab a Coke. Maybe that's a bit too big for us over the next 5 years, but in relative terms we are still only in a few thousand fridges around the United Kingdom, and I want BOL to be available at any time of day, breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacking. I want everybody to know that when they pick up a BOL, there's no reds on the traffic lights, there's never have been any reds, it's 100% made by Mother Nature. It is that perfect product to grab and go when you want to get some plant-powered nutrition. I'd love us to be a truly international brand. The thought of us being available around continental Europe, New York, California, down in Australia, no bounds to ambition to take BOL global. So in a nutshell, lots of innovation that hasn't hit market yet in fridges all around the world. That would be the headline, all landed by a team that's even bigger than it is at the moment.
And more formats, so because we're now, is it the power shakes that have just been launched?
Yeah.
So where do you see where are the boundaries do you see in the format of delivery? And this is kind of getting onto this kind of the innovation piece, I suppose. We talk a lot about is where how much time do you afford yourself to think about the what ifs?
Yeah. So the power shakes, ridiculously excited about. I hate the term meal replacement category, but it is the term where those drinks sit. The biggest and leading brand in this space is Huel, who are obviously absolutely killing it. Big respect to what the guys are doing there. They've got a very sporty proposition. Ours is definitely a bit more down the foodie route, and Euromonitor are predicting this meal replacement category over the next few years is going to be one of the fastest growing parts of the whole of food and drink. So that area of drinks is definitely a big area of focus for us over the next couple of years. And then in terms of where the boundaries are, it's probably one of my biggest development areas of trying to keep the main thing and not trying to do too many things at the same time. So we could go into ambient, we could go into frozen, we could start trying to make food for pets as well. But at the moment, continuing to focus on chilled and these meal occasions. Still, I don't think we've not properly cracked dinner yet. Sure. So I'd love us to come up with a really great dinner proposition, and we've got some ideas working with the chefs and nutritionists at the moment. And no doubt there'll be other drinks that will come to market. But what I just love about being based in London and the United Kingdom is it's just it's actually a tiny little place and it's such a hotbed of activity to test and learn stuff.
Nothing's off limits.
This is the Hub CP podcast.
Big failure as a positive has been slightly overused and misunderstood slightly. I'm all about learning from your mistakes, and but as an entrepreneur, failing on innovation, it's really sucks, because it costs a freaking fortune, and you don't have that many bites of the cherry. So,
could you give us an example? Or
I've got so many things wrong. Over lockdown we launched in a lovely range of centerpieces, and it was like a whole roasted cauliflower in this beautiful tinfoil packaging. It was a bit like, bringing home a bit of ottolenghi. Had lovely crumb and sauce, and like dining like you're dining out, and got really excited about that. Actually, whilst it was a great product and the people that bought it loved it, there's just not enough people around the UK prepared to switch out their roasted chicken for roasted cauliflower yet. So, there's been plenty of occasions where we've launched innovation that the team have over-delivered on the brief, and we've gone in and managed to get it into some retailers because they believe in the insight and the potential category opportunity, but potentially launched it before its time. We had our salad jars in market for years. It was a great product in a jar, inspired by a food safari I was on in California, that Mason salad jar vibe. But again, I think the sushi has less shelf life, but that's about it. Make it in the kitchen today and it goes off 4 or 5 days later. So by the time you've got it in a chilled lorry overnight and it finally makes itself into the fridge, you're kind of on countdown of 24 to 72 hours max for it to sell. And at all levels, wastage is a massive issue. Like, morally I hate it, and financially it's not great. So we just got to get better at being really innovative with products that can scale, because I'm not running a little deli, I'm not running a little family restaurant. The idea of running a little restaurant or a little deli is hugely appealing. Maybe that's what I'll do next. But I'm trying to create a brand that can scale internationally, and in order to do that, you need to be producing products that can get around these fridges all around the world, really. And that doesn't mean it needs to be long shelf life, but just got to get the balance right between niche and innovation.
Celebrating rebels.
This is the Hub CP podcast.
And as CEO, entrepreneur, are you the ideas man? Is that? Do you see that as your responsibility for pushing the envelope on these things and coming up with the what if brief?
I will absolutely push ideas out there. I've now got a team around me that are pretty experienced and are really comfortable saying, no, Paul, that's another crap idea, and I'll get back in my box, and they'll come up with ideas that are much better than mine. So, and that's totally fine. But definitely in the early years, that creativity and injecting that momentum in going after stuff that is a little bit outside of the norm. But I high performing people love responsibility, and so one of my main jobs is to keep empowering people. We have one of our WhatsApp groups at work is just a kind of competitor watch, and it's constantly awash with people putting up pictures of new recipes that they've seen in restaurants or new products they've seen on their travels. So just learning from what is out there, and just this melting pot of ideas that then leads into the vision and the purpose. It's a full team effort, but my ideas don't seem to get as far as they used to. Probably with good reason.
Yeah, everyone just smile and nod.
Yes, exactly.
Celebrating rebels.
This is the Hub CP podcast.
Conscious of time. I mean, last question. If we were to go, we talked about a lot about the future and where you're going to take BOL. We talked about where you are now and how you run the business. So imagine we go back in time. Imagine you can go back to California, visit yourself when you're writing that business plan on the Mexican sort of Leon concept. Knowing what you know now, what business advice would you be giving to yourself?
I think in 20 years on, I feel I'm a lot more, I'm a lot more comfortable in trying to enjoy the moment and less about setting goals that if not achieved I then beat myself up for. So I feel like it was, certainly if you're taking me back to those 20 years when I dropped out of university and realised I wasn't going to make it as a rugby player, and then I did kind of make it as a snowboard instructor for a very short time and then screwed that one up, and then tried to get a business going in the food world and didn't get it going. Like, it was kind of one hit after another, and I guess looking back I probably did beat myself up more than I probably realised, but I've always been pretty resilient and been brought up by a really loving family that have put grit and determination, some pretty old school values into me. So I think if I was to go back and give myself some advice, then it would be, don't forget to kind of enjoy the moment and not be too far-reaching with what success is, because you are kind of you're I was reading this thing about fluid intelligence and crystallized intelligence the other day, and how it's almost like up until you're kind of mid-40s you've just got this fluid intelligence where you're constantly learning things, and you're encouraged to try as many things as possible, and success is getting promoted at work or playing in the A team in sports, or it's just the speed of, and then when you get to like your mid-40s, I was reading about anyway, it then becomes a bit more crystallized intelligence, where it's more about what you've learned and putting that into practice, and a lot of your happiness is then driven by you giving back and serving a little bit more than it all being quite so self-centered. And I feel at this moment in time I definitely feel still on the fluid. I've still got so much to learn, but there's a little bit of me really starting to resonate with that crystallized intelligence, and actually I get so much enjoyment now from the young bucks in the team and trying to impart on them some of the stuff that I've learned, and get a huge amount of pleasure from then seeing them fly. It's the best part of the job. So by the way, that doesn't mean I've not enjoyed the ride, because I've had an incredibly enjoyable journey at Eason and at BOL, but I've definitely lost sleep quite a lot about thinking about the future. And I think if we all just lived in the moment a little bit more, it'd be a more chilled, happy world.
Cool, thanks ever so much. That's really fantastic insights, and I really appreciate you taking the time to chat to us today. Thank you.
Thank you.
At Cooper Parry, we love feedback.
Tell us what you'd like to hear.
Go to cooperparry.com/podcast.
This has been a Hub CP production, curated by Cooper Parry.
The Rebels of Accountancy.